Anytime Carolina and Kentucky get together, it's going to be epic. And this year is no exception, with two of the nation's most exciting and explosive offenses squaring off. So that means you need two of the nation's most exciting and explosive podcast hosts. And while Stephen A. Smith wouldn't pick up the phone, you've got me, Isaac Shade, and you've got Lance Daw, the host of Locked On Kentucky, to help get you ready for the game. Let's get right into it.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Friday, December 15th, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you for joining us for this very special crossover episode of the show between Locked On Tar Heels and Locked On Kentucky. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off on your first purchase. Hey, I want to thank you everydayers for joining us to make Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or watch to get your team every day. Man, if you'd love to be a bigger part of our community, you can come join the Locked On Tar Heels Discord chat where we're talking Carolina stuff all the time. The link is in the show notes. Come join us, because you want to be part of it for this game. It's going to be hot. Look, we've got two shows today on Friday. We've got this crossover and we've got our regular Friday show. I'm going to put the link to that just right up here. Boink. If you're watching on YouTube, you can click on that. But in addition to that, as I said, Lance Daw, the host of Locked On Kentucky, and I are about to get into a conversation to help get you ready for this game. Let's not waste any more time. Here we go. Folks, welcome into a great crossover here on Locked On between Locked On Kentucky and Locked On Tar Heels. I am Isaac Shade, the host of Locked On Tar Heels, joined by the host of Locked On Kentucky, Mr. Lance Daw. He is the man. And folks, anytime we get a blue blood battle, that's how I am trying to say that, blue blood battle, Lance, there we go. It is great for college basketball. And this is, by the way, a loaded weekend of college basketball. 3 top 15 AP matchups. We got Arizona and Purdue on Friday night. We've got Gonzaga and UConn. Electric stuff. But the one that everyone's going to be checking in on is this battle where we've got number 9 North Carolina, number 14 Kentucky in Atlanta as the nightcap of the CBS Sports Classic, tipping off at 5:30 Eastern or 30 minutes after Ohio State and UCLA on CBS. We don't have the FanDuel line yet, but Ken Palm has it, North Carolina by 2. Lance, this is the 43rd matchup between these two schools, with the Tar Heels leading the all-time series. I wouldn't guess that, 25-17. But how about this, my man? 26th meeting when both are ranked in the AP poll, 20th when they're both in the top 15. And I think that's what we expect from two blue blood programs. But it's just so good for the sport of college basketball.
Yeah, I love it whenever we get to play matchups like this. And I think this is something that you and I talked about probably a couple of months ago, early before the season started, about how awesome different things like this. And then also you have different things like the SEC. Now, SEC ACC Challenge could be seeing some Tar Heel Wildcat action and that thing moving forward. But I love it whenever we have high profile games like this early in the year. Obviously, Arizona Purdue this weekend is going to be another big one. You ran through Ohio State's matchup. It's going to be awesome. Love it, love it, love it. Whenever we get to see things like this, kind of helps us preview maybe some of these bigger games that you could possibly see in the NCAA tournament. Just love seeing these non-con heavyweight battles, and you love seeing two blue bloods throw down here in the ATL. Should be a very fun contest. Like you mentioned, I'm surprised that North Carolina leads this all-time series, but been a very competitive series as of late. And Wildcats, actually, if I'm not mistaken, in this most recent one, ran away with it. And I remember I had just started Locked On Kentucky whenever that game had tipped off, and it was control from start to tip. It felt like on the offensive end of the floor. Kind of a shocker, though. I do not expect there to be a blowout one way or another in this one, though. Should be a much more competitive, very, very fun game in Atlanta.
What's funny, Lance, is that was about a month before I started Locked On Tar Heels, and so I did not have to cover that game. But yeah, I think drubbing is the word that I recall, 98-69. And it was just one of those games where Kentucky, I feel like if I remember correctly, hadn't really leaned into who they were yet, but it all came together, and it was just like, oh, here's all this ridiculous basketball talent coming together. And in fact, the Wildcats have won 2 out of the last 3, all of which have been in the CBS Sports Classic. Lance, I look fondly back on the 2016-17 season because we did get 2 epic matchups between these 2 teams, each team winning one. There was that insane 103-100 game in Vegas where Malik Monk had approximately 85,000 points. If I
he went ballistic in that one. Unfortunately, not the same in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, and that was weird. Is because he just didn't have that same level of production in the Elite Eight game. The one obviously that Carolina won on the Luke Maye shot, and so just 2 phenomenal games we had that season. I love it when we get that, like a regular season matchup and one in postseason, because again, that's good for the sport of college basketball. Lance, as we start to look forward to this game on Saturday, here's what I feel like both these teams are similar in terms of who they are and what they're doing and where they're at. Like, here's an example of what I mean by that. It feels like they're both extremely talented, but not quite in that top 8, like elite level teams that we're seeing. Like Carolina played UConn last week, and it was clear that the Tar Heels are not on the same level right now with the Huskies, but both these teams have the talent. Do you agree with that assessment as you look at it from the Kentucky side? And what do the Wildcats need to do to break that glass ceiling?
Yeah, I think both of these teams have you talk about ceiling, they have the ability to play and compete with these really, really good teams that you're seeing right now. Houston, Arizona, Purdue, UConn, like you mentioned, the upper echelon of college basketball right now. They have the ability to do that. They have the talent on roster, but I don't think you've seen the consistency that you would have liked to have seen coming out the gates here, especially from watching Kentucky right now, because of, I think, for the Wildcats specifically, their lack of experience. Obviously, they've got Antonio Reeves. Obviously, they've got Trey Mitchell. But outside of that, they're dealing with some very, very young players that are being thrown into the fire. One of them most recently in his second game playing against Penn. So you've got a lot of things that you need to kind of work on, mature, grow, develop, whatever word you want to use there. They've got to figure things out. And so you saw the loss to UNC Wilmington as a huge, huge issue with Kentucky's resume now moving forward. And you get to see bumps in the road like that. And I think that's what separates Kentucky from this top 8 right now is the consistency. With Carolina, you can speak to this better than I can, but you are playing very well overall and in different areas right now. You beat a couple of really good teams. Arkansas, while they were ranked, you were able to tackle them. You were able to get a win to start at ACC play against Florida State. You lose that game to UConn, and it's just kind of correct me if I'm wrong, it is just kind of like, okay, this is the status of UNC and UK right now compared to a team like UConn. And it's just a very, very good group of teams. And then Kentucky and UNC right there. I think you said this before we started recording, just kind of knocking on the door, waiting to show some more consistency and maybe get a victory over one of those teams.
Yeah, it's funny, Lance, because what you said about Kentucky, it parallels to North Carolina, but it's not because of youth. It's because of newness. The Tar Heels have 4 returning scholarship players, 2 freshmen, and 5 transfers. So 7 of your 11 scholarship players are brand new to the program this year. And so it's similar, again, but a nuanced reason why this team is still trying to figure out a little bit of its identity, whether it's like RJ Davis right now is playing out of his mind, doing things that have only been done a couple times in Carolina history in terms of 4 straight 25-plus point games, 33 straight free throws, things like that. But then you're figuring out, like, what do we have in Harrison Ingram, the Stanford transfer? What do we have? Cormac Ryan, the Notre Dame transfer, hasn't really been consistent from 3 and things like that, that the Tar Heels are still trying to find that identity in a similar way to Kentucky. And as you look at it, Lance, I think both of these teams are super fun. When we look at some of those parallels we were talking about earlier, they are both elite offensive teams. Right now, as we record this at KenPom, Kentucky is 14th in offensive efficiency, Carolina 7th, but they're both good, not great on the defense, where Kentucky's 53rd in defensive efficiency and Carolina's 48th. And so this legitimately might resemble that 103-100 game in Vegas from back in December of 2016.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could see, I think in this one, are we going to see 100 points scored between for these two teams individually? maybe not, but I think that you'll get close. And then also the pacing of this one, I think is going to be just incredibly fast. I want to kind of go ahead and break this down, dive into these two teams individually, what we see out of the individual players, maybe talk a little bit more about the numbers here and just how similar these two teams are. Before we dive into that, though, guys, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Game Time. We are just over a week away from Christmas. And if you need a last minute gift idea, like maybe tickets to the upcoming North Carolina Kentucky game,
Oh,
well,
Lance,
good
thank you.
news.
That's what I wanted for Christmas. How'd you know?
Exactly. You know what? It's what I wanted for Christmas as well. Believe it or not, you can head over to Game Time and they can help you out. They are the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all of the sporting events in your area. They've also got music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and then their best price guarantee. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets. You shouldn't have to worry whenever you're going to buy tickets to your next big event. And thankfully, Game Time has you covered. They also have deals all the way up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. So if you are trying to get some last minute tickets, if you're hanging out in the ATL and you want to go watch this game, you can do that with Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, continuing along here on this Locked On crossover, Lance Dahl, Isaac Shade, Locked On Tar Heels, Locked On Kentucky podcast. Isaac, I actually do kind of want to dive into the UNC Tar Heels a little bit. You talked there for a moment about RJ Davis, currently averaging 21 points per game for the Tar Heels, just a really special score. Kind of break down for me the strengths of this UNC offense, because like we mentioned, both UK and UNC very similar in what they like to do. What makes this Tar Heel offense go, and what's been the success for them so far this season?
That's a great question. Lance, I think first thing we need to say is for those who haven't seen Carolina in the Hubert Davis era, do not think of a Roy Williams style offense where you've got the traditional two bigs, a wing, a point guard, and a shooting guard. They have modernized similar to what, we're seeing Kentucky launch more threes now this year. That is more Carolina's offense under Coach Davis, spacing all around Armando Bacot on the interior. Interestingly, it's been Caleb Love and RJ Davis in the backcourt the past several years. Caleb Love is transferred over to Arizona, where he's doing just well for himself. Thank you very much. But what's interesting is it's kind of unlocked RJ Davis to not feel like, am I the guy? Am I sharing the backcourt? What's going on?
Yep.
He is really leaning into that two guard role where freshman Elliot Cadeau comes in as a true pass first point guard and is acting in that distribution sort of role that allows RJ Davis to be freed up to score. Now, RJ is an undersized guard. He's about 6 feet tall. He can light it up from three. As I said a minute ago, he has 33 straight made free throws right now, the leading free throw shooter by percentage in Carolina history. So he's looking to get to the rim or shoot from outside. He's really good in the mid-range, even though it's so an incredibly inefficient shot. But what that does with that spacing is it allows space for Armando Bacot in the interior.
Yeah.
Typically, Bacot does well if he's playing somebody like a Trey Mitchell, where he doesn't have that elite NBA type length. That's one of the problems I potentially see with Aaron Bradshaw getting back into the mix. If he's guarding Bacot, is he'll sometimes struggle with length, like against Donovan Clingan from UConn, for example. One of the wrinkles Carolina has found recently is utilizing Harrison Ingram in some isolation on a wing or being able to back down his opponent. It's nice because he doesn't need an entry pass. He can just go from ball handling back down in the paint and either kick out or score in the lane. And so that's kind of the three-headed monster of it, is those guys. And then you got Cormac Ryan on the wing as well. And again, with Elliot Cadeau distributing.
Yeah, it's a very, very talented group of Tar Heels that know how to score. And if you go and look on KenPom right now, you'll see, if you go down to the point distribution, this is something that I've loved to break down whenever looking at Kentucky's opponents this season. You look at free throws, and the Tar Heels get about 25% of their points from the foul line. That's top 20 nationally. That's very, very good. You look at that Tennessee game, 192. If I'm not mistaken, Isaac, Y'all were able to get to the foul line quite a bit in that one, actually 38 times,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you knocked down 32 free throws. Is that just simply a part of this offense is focusing on getting to the rim, trying to draw some of these fouls, or has it been the majority of these points, has it been kind of just by happenstance?
No, that is an intentional part of the offense. One of the things that Coach Hubert Davis says is that he wants to make more free throws than his opponents take, and Carolina has done that. I don't have the actual numbers of it pulled up in front of me right now, but that has been very much a thing that was never more true than, as you said, in that Tennessee game. Same in the game after that with Florida State. Carolina was at the line a ton, and part of that is they're not sending their opponents to the free throw line all that much. They're doing a decent, not elite job of fouling, of staying away from fouling. And so, yes, very much so. Part of that, as I said, is RJ Davis is the number one free throw shooter in Carolina history by percentage. Cormac Ryan is also above 90% right now. And part of that revelation is that Armando Bacot, who is a career sub 70% free throw shooter, is above 80% this year. And he's your guy that's at the line the most. And so it's like he doesn't get played off the court at the end of a game.
You talked about Harrison Ingram, the Stanford transfer for you guys. He's somebody that I'm looking at that could potentially be a matchup problem for the Wildcats, because we can discuss it in a little bit about how rotationally Kentucky's going to want to attack UNC. But right now, it should be a Duthiero starting at the 4 for the Wildcats, listed at 6'8". I think that physically, when you look at Harrison Ingram, he's probably got an edge over both Bradshaw and Thiero. The height advantage would go to Kentucky whenever they want to rotate Bradshaw in, but Bradshaw is 225 at best. Harrison Ingram is 230, 235, a little bit more physical, a little bit more muscular. How do you see the Tar Heels utilizing Harrison Ingram in this one? Is there going to be anything different that they may try and do with those two guys guarding him, or do you think they're just going to utilize him the way that they have previously?
I think if the coaching staff believes that they have that physical advantage that you're talking about over Thiero, or even if Bradshaw gets switched on him, then they'll go to it. It's Coach Davis has really kind of employed this NBA thought process of let's find something, exploit it until you stop it. And so, for example, against Arkansas, Carolina went to Ingram over and over and over, and he consistently made the right decisions of when to call his own number, when to kick out, when to swing it. And that's part of what made it work well. What you don't want to see is that causing Carolina to get away from getting it into Bacot, get away from allowing Elliot Cadeau to be a playmaker, for example. And so there is a balance to it, but Harrison Ingram has that ability to rebound and run. He can lead the break himself, which is important with what he's going to be able to do, but also not afraid to distribute. And so if that does turn out, I think they'll certainly try it. And if it is successful, I see no reason why they wouldn't stick with it.
Final question I've got for you here. You know, it's something that you see throughout the December slate for a majority of teams is just the spacing between these games that you see with finals and then with the holiday. You look at North Carolina right now on their schedule; they have not played a game since December 5th, whenever they lost to UConn, and Kentucky not played a game since last weekend against Penn. What do you think about the rust heading into this matchup? Will there be any of that? Will there be any kind of inconsistencies here to start the game? How should the Tar Heels come out in this one?
Lance, I talked about this exact thing on yesterday's Locked On Tar Heels, that in some regard, there is a win in it. Cormac Ryan's ankle has been banged up. He rolled it pretty badly in the second game of Battle for Atlantis against Villanova. And so in that regard, you're getting healed up. RJ Davis being a little undersized, he's always banged up. That's a good thing. But there will be rust for the Tar Heels. We see this every year with teams coming out of finals week, whereas Kentucky, if I remember, it will have been like a week to the day since they've played last Saturday against Penn by the time this game tips off. And so, yeah, I expect there's to be some rust for Carolina. A lot of that's going to depend on how much they've been individually doing, how they've been eating, where's the conditioning level at? Does it take 4 minutes to get into game shape? And if so, with a team of Kentucky's talent, you could be finding yourself in a 16-4 deficit by the time you're going, if you're not ready. And so I think we need to all watch. One of the things I'm critically going to be watching for is that first 4-minute stretch before the under 16 media timeout.
Yeah, I think it's going to be important that both these teams wake up and shape up because it's going to be, like we said, we expect it to be a fast-paced, high-scoring contest, and both these teams certainly have the ability to put it in the hole, but whether or not we're going to be able to see them get up to speed very quickly is going to be something to watch here.
Speaking of getting up to speed, Lance, this Kentucky backcourt is something to behold. I cannot wait to watch these two teams in action. We're going to flip the script, and I'm going to talk to Lance about Big Blue Nation and the Wildcats in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels and Locked On Kentucky is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Look, testing your skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's really simple to play. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. And then they've got quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types to make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Lance, I thought we could all come around this together. Lamar Jackson, his passing yards for Sunday against the Jags is set at 210.5. This is a former UK rival. It's a Carolina conference foe. Folks, let's all unite, take the less on this, and then hate watch this game as the Ravens hopefully fall and Lamar doesn't get to 210.5.
You know what? I'm all in on this one. And I absolutely love this. And I'm looking at it right now on Prize Picks. I may submit this entry before the ad read is over. That's how quickly I can do it right now.
I love it. Let's Tar Heels, Wildcats unite. Let's get it. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Lance, I think one of the things that outsiders looking in at Kentucky this year might be remembering is the turbulent and tumultuous offseason for the Wildcats, where it hung in the balance for a long time of what this team would have outside of this loaded freshman class. Eventually, we know that Antonio Reeves did decide to come back. We know that thanks to the Bob Huggins debacle at West Virginia, they ultimately landed Trey Mitchell. What has getting those two veteran players back and in particular, meant for John Cal's team this season?
Well, we'll start here with Trey Mitchell, the guy that was not here a season ago. This is someone I discussed on yesterday's episode as maybe one of the, if not the most valuable piece on this Kentucky team. Because Trey Mitchell, while he is not the tallest center in the world, while he is not the most physically imposing, while he's not the best defender, he is a massive part of what makes this offense go. Because he is a very, very good passing big, averaging almost 4 assists per game for UK. You watch the way this thing works for him. He has had every single game this season. He's finished with more assists than turnovers, and he's been able to decisively pick and choose his spots, whether it be score himself, whether it be kick the ball out for a shooter, whether it be handle the ball at the top of the key. He can do all of these different things for UK. And it's almost like a guy that has traditionally played power forward for most of his career that can handle the ball, that can shoot it a little bit. And you're just asking him to play a small ball 5. Now, Trey Mitchell has rotated between those two positions throughout his career, but you're really getting to see him blossom as that 5 with now Aaron Bradshaw beside him at the 4 position, who is going to be consistently a recipient of Trey Mitchell passes for the future. So Mitchell can get up and down the floor with this offense. He is definitely comfortable running the breakneck pace that Kentucky has. He's been a very good trailer as well, shooting threes at the top at different points this season against various opponents. He can pass, he can shoot, he can rebound. He can do literally everything for this team. So Trey Mitchell has been an extremely valuable part of this offense. And then you look at Antonio Reeves, something that I criticized him for last year was his lack of consistency shooting the basketball, because there would be nights where Reeves just went ballistic. I mean, it did not matter where he was shooting from. The ball was going in, and there was literally nothing that you could do about it. And then you had performances like the one in the NCAA tournament against Kansas State, where it's just like, was it Dion Waiters that said that quote? Is like, I don't care if I'm going 0 for 30, I'm still going to keep shooting. It kind of felt like that with Antonio Reeves, where it's like, I'm fogging them up, boys. One of them's going to hit, and none of them did. And then we saw earlier this season, I can't remember what game it was early, but he did not shoot. It was the Kansas game. He did not shoot particularly well.
Yep.
And I had to have a conversation like, okay, is this the Antonio Reeves that we're going to see throughout the year? Because if it is, thank goodness Kentucky's got 3 other guards that they can rely on, because it's not just going to be the Antonio Reeves show. And ever since then, he has really come together and he has been a consistent guard. Now, it is still early in the season, and we're going to have to see how he survives SEC play. But right now, Antonio Reeves leads the team in scoring at 18 points per game. He's shooting 43% from deep and 51% from the floor. I've seen him do a lot of different things outside of just being somebody that can knock down that 3-point shot. He can drive and finish. That's something that's really impressed me. It really impressed me in the Global Jam, his ability to go and drive and finish at the hole. He's got a really nice floater game where if you get him on that block, he's going to throw one up and he's going to knock it down. I've yet to see him miss a floater where he's gotten in rhythm on the block this season. He's a very good multifaceted scorer that can do a lot of different things with the basketball in his hands. Not a distributor, a better rebounder than he was a season ago, but that scoring, man, if it can be consistent, you love Antonio Reeves, especially in a game like this.
And we expect to see he and probably Cormac Ryan being the ones guarding each other there in the starting lineup. Lance, let's stick in the backcourt, because this has been one of my favorite stories across the entire college basketball landscape this season is Kentucky's backcourt. I think coming into the season, those who were up to speed on the recruiting class expected it to be Rob Dillingham and DJ Wagner, and then Reed Sheppard might get some minutes here or there. Well, we started to see it this summer. You talked about the Global Jam where it was like, oh, Reed Sheppard might have a role on this team. From the outside looking in, Lance, correct me if I'm wrong, DJ has not lived up to the billing, and Reed Sheppard has far exceeded any expectations we could have had for him, is popping up in lottery spots on the mock drafts. And it's so cool because he is Kentucky royalty, where his dad is one of my first memories of Kentucky basketball with Jeff Sheppard. And so what a cool story this is, Lance. Bring us into the Kentucky side of it.
I'll say this. You talk about DJ Wagner. Every one of Kentucky's guards does something well. Wagner just simply has not been able to shoot the ball well to begin the season, and he has been outperformed by Reed Sheppard. And I hate to be somebody that whenever you ask me about a player, I just simply go and read their stats. But for Reed Sheppard, I need to read you his stats across the board. So like you mentioned, we weren't expecting a ton of him in the spring. We get to see him during the Global Jam in July. Hey, we may actually get to see Reed Sheppard be a legitimate piece of this team. And then as the offseason progressed and we saw the season start, Reed Sheppard went just ballistic efficiency-wise. Look at these numbers. He's averaging 13 points in 26 and a half minutes, right? 13 points to go along with 4.5 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, a block a game, while shooting 61% from the floor, 92% from the foul line, and 59% from 3.
So those numbers are good? Is that what
my sources are telling me? The math department at Locked On Kentucky came to me yesterday and said, hey, these are pretty good numbers. You should talk about him a little bit more. But yeah, I am blown away with how Reed Sheppard has played so far this season. And it's not just the offense. Like you see there, 3 steals a game. He is a really good on-ball defender. Very, very, very good on-ball defender. He sees the court well whenever he's playing point guard. He's a great off-ball shooter in catch-and-shoot situations. We got to see him hurt Miami pretty badly just a couple of weeks ago. He has done a little bit of everything for Kentucky, and statistically, it just boggles my mind that he has been as good as he has been through these first 9 games of the season. And I continue to tell my subscribers, the statistics, the efficiency, it's going to go down. It has to go down. There is no world where he finishes the season shooting 60% from 3 and averaging 13 points a game. It's not going to happen. But he is going to continue to be a very good player for the Wildcats and somebody that they arguably rely on heavily during conference play because of how consistent he is. So Reed Sheppard right now, it's been a phenomenal story that he's been able to come out and play this well. It's awesome to see Kentucky, or during games, them continue to pan to the crowd to see the Sheppard, the Sheppards get so excited for their son, Jeff Sheppard, usually just kind of like just no emotion, but he's there, he's celebrating. I love the story. I love the hype. I love the fact that fans can they have a player that they feel like they can attach to and they can really get excited about, because over these past few years, Kentucky's had the Sheebways, they've had the Foxes, they've had the Monks, but there was a stretch there, about a 3-year stretch, where Kentucky didn't really feel like they had like that hometown kid or that fan favorite, and you're getting to see that, I think, absolutely. And Reed Sheppard, who is, I have to eat my words because I said at the beginning of the season, he's lottery pick potential. He has that talent, but we're not going to see him. He's not going to get enough opportunities to actually display it this year. Reed Sheppard could be a lottery pick. He could very well be a lottery pick, and the mocks are reflecting it. So love Reed Sheppard.
Lance, we got to get to some predictions for this thing, but on the injury side of things, obviously, it's so great that Aaron Bradshaw is back. We never want these young men out. It's good to see Ugonna Onyenso getting close. It sounds like we might see him on Saturday as we record this. Lance and I were talking about it beforehand. We're not sure yet. There's nothing official out, so we'll keep our eyes out on that. That'd be massive to get him, literally massive, to get him back available in the front court. Lance, again, KenPom has this game, North Carolina, by 85-83. What is your prediction for it?
I think that both these teams have very fun offenses. If we're just gonna be really simple here for a second, offense good, defense both these teams have some interesting pieces. They will run up and down the court. They will try and score in a variety of ways. But I think when you look at, again, I've said this probably 100 times already on this recording, consistency. And I don't know if I trust Kentucky in this spot after losing to UNC Wilmington. That game has kind of hurt me. And you got to see against Penn some more issues. Penn only scored 66 points, but you go and watch that game. Their ability to consistently drive, get to the rim, find these backdoor cuts, Kentucky not closing out on shooters that allowed the Quakers to kind of get back in that game after Kentucky built a lead multiple times. I'm scared that you're not going to be able to hold on against a team like North Carolina, who has that talent, who has the ability to hurt you at the foul line. This is not a lengthy rotation that Kentucky has, especially if Hugo does not play. Down low, you could see Kentucky get into some foul trouble here if they're not careful. I'm going to take North Carolina to win this game by maybe 1 or 2 or 3 points. I told my subscribers literally 2 weeks ago, hey, by the way, unless something changes, I'm picking UNC to win this game. I don't feel good about the spot, and I just don't see Kentucky finding that consistency like they did against Miami. If they do, great, and I will more than willingly eat my words. But I want to see this team try and play a little defense, or at the very least, just have another insanely dominant offensive game, which it is possible.
And I think that's where the Carolina side of things is probably there's this fear and trepidation of, yes, Kentucky hasn't been consistent, but we've seen it when the lights come on in these moments where Kentucky's talent just says, all right, it's time, here we go. And the Wildcats boat race this thing. So I think there is a very real world in which that's a possibility, particularly if Carolina comes out with that rust as a potential that we talked about, Lance. Ultimately, though, I do see the more experienced Carolina team doing exactly what you said and winning a close one, utilizing the free throw line, as we talked about down the stretch, to do it with RJ Davis closing this thing out from the line. Give me Carolina by 2, just like KenPom has it. Lance, cannot wait for this game. Best of luck to the Wildcats. Best of luck to the Tar Heels. Somebody's going to come out in better shape heading into conference slate and getting ready for Christmas.
Absolutely. Should be a thriller.
That's it for this episode of Locked On Tar Heels. Once again, big thanks to Lance for joining me to help get us all ready for this matchup between Carolina and Kentucky. Don't forget, we do have another show out today on Friday. Again, you can go watch that now. In fact, if you're watching on YouTube, it's about to premiere right after this one. And so you'll be able to catch it right after this. Again, come join our Discord. The link is in the show notes. We'd love to chat with you, especially during the games. The chat gets hot. You don't want to miss out. You can email the show lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to us on video and audio formats. Rate the show if you would. Smash the like button if you're watching, and we'd love to hear your comments and thoughts on the matchup. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be right back with you to break this whole game down coming up soon. But until then, peace.